All right, so welcome to today's Spark Your Health Talk, Body and Soul, a discussion on the Torah Path to Health and Fitness. My name is Katira Noviello Kapoor, and I am the Senior Director of Health Promotion and Wellness and Athletics at the 92nd Street Y and the founder of the Spark Your Health platform. This evening, we look forward to a meaningful discussion on the intersection of spirituality and prioritizing our own health and well-being with Rabbi Alexander Seinfeld and Dr. Daniel Grove. We hope you will also be able to join us for upcoming Spark Your Health events in the winter, such as Rethinking Diabetes with health journalists Gary Taubes and Abby Schwartz, which is actually coming up this coming Thursday. So really hope you'll consider joining us for that talk, as well as going full frontal on women's health with Samantha B. and Dr. Jen Gunter on February 1st. In-person tickets for this event are actually already sold out, but we do have live stream tickets still available. For run of show for this evening, we'll leave 15 minutes at the end of our program for questions, which we'll be collecting throughout the duration of the event through the chat. So feel free to be typing in those questions along the way. And I am now pleased to introduce our speakers and the authors of Body and Soul to the virtual stage.
Hello.
Hello there. So Dr. Daniel Grove is a board certified in general internal medicine, critical care, and pulmonology, and is affiliated with MedStar Health Hospitals in the Baltimore, Washington region. He is the author of The Weight Loss Counter Revolution, and of course, Body and Soul as well. Welcome, Dr. Grove. And
thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And Rabbi and Dr. Alexander Seinfeld heads Jewish Spiritual Literacy, a nonprofit organization dedicated to revitalizing Jewish education. His previous books include The Art of Amazement, Discover Judaism's Forgotten Spirituality, and The Art of Kavana. So Rabbi Seinfeld, welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Shalom, shalom.
All right. Well, I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to read this amazing book. If not, we definitely, suggest that maybe after this conversation, you'll be intrigued and want to pick up a copy. But let's start with the very theme of the book, and then we'll dig deeper into these concepts. So as an overview, and from you researching the Torah with the wellness perspective in mind, how does taking care of ourselves and developing a healthy lifestyle nourish our souls?
I'd like to maybe field that first, if I may. My answer goes back to why I started this project before I even met Dr. Grove and we became partners. I had heard, I've been learned, and I've been taught by my own rabbis and teachers that the Torah contains wisdom that can help in any area of life, whether it's your marriage or your job, interpersonal ethics, so on. It's not just about quote unquote religion. And I was just curious if the Torah contained wisdom that I went with the assumption it has wisdom to help us with our health and our physical and mental health. But I didn't know what that wisdom was. And what we see around the country, really around the world, people who are struggling with various health problems that are pretty widespread. I mean, diabetes, cardiovascular disease are the biggest killers in America. And these are they're reportedly preventable, but why are so many people suffering from these? And what wisdom does the Torah have? And what I discovered, and the basis of the book, is that if we understand the Torah's view of the person, what is a human being? Is a human being just a very smart monkey? And we're just essentially animals with big brains? That's not the traditional Torah view of what a human is. Human being is a two-part creature, part animal and part something else that we call neshama, or soul. And because that's what makes us different from other creatures, according to our tradition. And when a person looks at yourself, you look at yourself as, I'm not a human being trying to be spiritual. I'm a spiritual being trying to be human. That's a great line. I didn't make it up, but I wish I had. But when you look at yourself, understand that we have a purpose to life. And our purpose is to use the body, but not to let the body control us. The body is a tool to achieve something spiritually then taking care of my health becomes taking care of my body, right? Becomes part of my spiritual life. Whatever my spiritual goals are, if I see my body as a tool for achieving that, then taking care of one is going to take care of the other. They go hand in hand.
That's funny. Rabbi Seinfeld came to the idea of the body through learning the Torah, and I came to the Torah through learning about the body. I was not raised as a religious or Orthodox. I was raised in the Reform movement, not very strongly affiliated, but affiliated very strongly with Judaism, but not with Torah Judaism. And then in medical school, when you see how the body works, an understanding of the body, and then also dealing with things like life and death, these kind of the kind of questions that you ask, and I learned a similar thing like Rabbi Seinfeld, that the when I went to a yeshiva, we learned that there's a connection. There's a body soul connection, and you cannot neglect one and not have it affect the other. You can't neglect your health and not have it affect you spiritually, and you cannot affect the spirit and not eventually have it affect you physically. These are intertwined things that both must be addressed.
That's such an interesting point. I have a feeling we're going to go back to that point a little later in this discussion. So you talk about the concept of the body being holy. Can you elaborate on the concept and how it may tie into taking pride and time in how we care for our overall health? I think sometimes taking care of our own health can be kind of pushed to the side.
I think that's I'm glad you asked that question. It seems to me that most people I meet and discuss this topic with, I would guess Dr. Grove would agree with this. Most people know it's kind of makes good sense to take care of your health. Like most people know that that's kind of important, but we fail to do it often in our best possible way, often fail miserably. And why is that? Well, it's complicated. There might be various reasons, but one of the big reasons is motivation. Not sufficiently motivated to make the changes and to study or to get help or whatever it is I need to do. So I use the analogy, we use the analogy in the book of a sports car. Imagine somebody, you came home one day and parked in front of your house or your apartment was the most beautiful car you've ever seen. Pick your car, Rolls Royce or whatever it is. And there's a big ribbon on it, and there's a card with your name on it. And that card's, you open up the card, it says, you're such a good neighbor, I decided to give you this present of this car. And don't worry, I put it on my own insurance. And here's, by the way, a credit card you can use to take care of it, put the best fuel in it, et cetera. Can you imagine such a gift? Now, if you had such a gift given to you and by your next door neighbor, and you know that they're watching you, would you possibly put anything but the best quality fuel into that car? Would you possibly not take the best care of it? It's all paid for. Now, what if you knew that was the only car you would ever own? And when we understand that the body has a purpose, that's not simply an accident, that this idea that we were created for a reason, the body is a gift to us to help us achieve our potential. And it's not simply a physical thing. It is a physical thing, but it's not only a physical thing. It's a physical thing that has a purpose, and it's a gift to us. That's what I mean by holy. The body, it's not inherently holy. It has a holy potential. We have to make it so. We have to use it in the right way. That should be motivating to us. We should wake up every morning and think, my body's a gift. I better take care of it, because it has. If I don't, I'm not going to achieve my fullest potential, my spiritual potential.
Incredible way to look at it. Dr. Grove, do you have anything to add?
No, yeah, I think that it says it very well. If you think of your body as more than just the sack of water and cells that carries you around, is something that this is. I do like the metaphor of the only car you'll ever have. I think about, I don't know if you've ever been, I've never been there, but I heard about in Cuba where they had the embargo. They have cars from the 50s, and they take such good care of them. Everybody's a mechanic in Cuba because they know they're not getting another one of these cars. So if you realize that this is the only car you're going to get, or this is the only house you're going to get, or this is going to whatever you can get, you're going to look at it much different. But for some reason, there's a disconnect. We don't think of our bodies that way.
Yes.
I mean, it's happening. Listen, I have extra motivation. I see every day what happens to the bodies that are not taken care of. And The problem is that most people, it seems, wait until something terrible happens before they say, okay, now I'm going to make a change. The problem is usually by that time it's too late, right? Most of the damage happens in accumulation over years and years and years. And so, it's funny, like when I talk to my patients in my office, I say, listen, I work in an ICU, intensive care unit. I see people with the worst and the most advanced forms of all diseases. And I say, geez, I wish I could have gone to this person 20 years ago and said, like, just make a change now. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, make a change now, and you can make a difference. Now, the good news is our bodies are much more resilient and respond better to upkeep than our cars. So there's always time to go back. You have a much longer longevity with the body if you take care of it. Even if you messed up for a few decades, you can always replace and fix a lot of the damage that was done.
I personally don't like to exercise. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it unless I'm playing a game. That's one thing.
Right.
But just exercising because on the treadmill or whatever it is I'm doing, I don't love it. We have this word in Hebrew, when a person does an action to increase my holiness of myself, a holy action, the word is mitzvah. A mitzvah is an action that raises my holiness. So for me, that's a motivator. When I say to myself, it's a mitzvah to exercise. You may not like it, but it may be hard, but so what? Don't be afraid of hard. According to the effort is the reward, is a famous Jewish saying. It's meant to be hard, because if it was too easy, then it wouldn't be a meaningful mitzvah. A meaningful mitzvah is one that requires you to push yourself a little bit. Maybe it's overcome some kind of inertia that you have. That's the whole idea of life, that it's meant to be hard because hard makes it meaningful. And then you're whatever, I use exercise as an example, whatever that healthy practice is that you're trying to accomplish, it becomes really a great motivator, and you become healthier and you become holy at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think this trend going on right now with the cold plunge, the morning cold plunge, that's a bit about what you're talking about. The philosophy behind it is that nobody really actually wants to do it, but once they force themselves to do it, they feel like they can tackle anything that day. So it's actually benefiting them and their brain development by pushing themselves to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or historical thing. Maybe it's the I don't know, but people are always asking whether something is hard or easy. And I think it's the wrong question. The question is not whether something is hard or easy. The question is whether it's worth it, right? Because if it's worth it, then you can figure out hard. And I think that's true with most things. And taking care of your body is for sure worth it, right? For all reasons, the physical, the spiritual, it's definitely worth it. So is it hard? Often it is. The nice thing is that we've been given a gift by the Lord of things, chemicals called endorphins and enkephalins and all these things, and testosterone and adrenaline, all these things that flood our body when we exercise. If you can get through the first sort of 5-10 minutes, and they make it easier, they make it more enjoyable. You get a big rush when you jump in cold water, and that's what makes you feel good when you not when you're in there, but when you jump out and warm up.
Exactly. Well, this kind of cues us up perfectly for the next question, I think. So I'm guessing there's a few people in the audience, maybe a lot, that can empathize with feeling like they just don't have enough hours in the day to exercise or take care of themselves. Maybe they're struggling with motivation to get going. So in terms of the Torah, what tips do you have for tapping into our spirituality as a way to carve out that time, as maybe we can lean into that spirituality and make ourselves feel maybe a little less guilty for carving out that time to take care of ourselves?
Dr. Grove and I each have a different answer to this question. I'll let you go first, Doctor.
What does the Torah say, or the Jewish response, or just in the general approach? Would you?
In terms of the Torah, but then you can expand beyond that as well.
Listen, there's a discussion. The rabbi will correct me, because the nice thing about not being a rabbi is I can make these mistakes. Is that there's a question about, like, what's the most important idea in the Torah, and one idea is maybe it's Shema Yisrael. One idea is that we're all created in the image of God. But one answer it gives is there's a statement that says that every morning there was a offering that was given in the temple. It was brought every morning and every evening. And that's an opinion that's the most important idea in the Torah. There's an offering brought in the morning, an offering brought in the evening. And so the question is, well, so there's so many big things, big ideas, big philosophies, life-changing, ideas and philosophies, things that bring tremendous holiness. And the thing that you think is most important is this thing that we just did once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Like, that's the most important thing. And the answer is yes. From a Jewish perspective, one of the most important things, and the most valuable and amazing ways to build yourself physically, spiritually, etc., is that small action, but small actions every day, right? Small actions with consistency are far more powerful than big ideas that overwhelm you and you can't put into practice. Like, I mean, I think the book that actually my rabbi recommended to me was called Atomic Habits, right? I don't know if you ever, by James Clear. Like, this is an amazing book. So, and I think it's amazing because the way he says to get an exercise is not to join a gym, and it's not, it's not to start a couch to marathon program. It's every day you walk for 2 minutes and no more than 2 minutes. You stop at 2 minutes, but you do it every day. And then eventually you develop the habit, and then you're doing 5, and then you're doing more. And then it doesn't become difficult. It's not difficult anymore. It's that first little bit, and it's the way to make yourselves better in anything. Ask any musician, ask any athlete, ask anybody who's successful, and you ask yourself, what are the things in my life that I've been successful? And usually it's not because I did some giant dramatic thing. It's because I got up every day, I did one thing or 2 things, but I did it every day. And I think that's, at least from a health, and I don't know, Rabbi, I think Rabbi Seinfeld will tell you if my Torah is correct, but that's, I think, a very fundamental. If you look at the way Jewish practice puts a very high value on daily things. Doing things consistently is very important, and I think it's because it's the impact that the daily small things have in accumulating and impacting a human being.
My tweak of what you said would be like this. Going back to your original question, I've had this conversation with many people. They say exactly what you said. I know it's important. I don't have time. And I'll ask them honestly, could you find 10 minutes in your busy day in your living room? And no one ever said to me, no, I can't find 10 minutes. I say 10 minutes, not 2 minutes, for a reason. I think that's a chunk of what people should, think about. You can do 10 minutes, okay? And make it once they teach you how to do a meaningful exercise in 10 minutes. The same thing Dr. Grove is saying. I'm just not saying 2, I'm saying 10, but I'm going to add to that, which is exercise as a activity has value, and there's different types of exercise. But there's another value, another activity that's not usually called exercise, but is related. It's called not being sedentary. Not being sedentary. If someone exercises an hour a day and then is sitting down the rest of the day, it's probably worse for them than somebody who is active but not exercising. And the way to change that habit is, for example, when you drive to the grocery store or you drive to the shopping mall or Target or wherever you go, are you parking at the closest spot you can find? Or you do like I do, I'm driving my kids nuts, parking the farthest spot. Literally,
you're less likely to get a
farthest spot in the parking lot, always. My kids know it. And like, this is what we do as a family. We park at the farthest spot. And
we have to explain, Rabbi Seinfeld, we have to explain to the New Yorkers what a parking spot is, right? We have these big open spaces where people can park their cars. So just, it's a cultural thing we do here.
I mean, I used to chuckle when I before the pandemic, I was going to the local JCC to exercise, and I would see people driving in circles looking for the closest spot. These people are coming to exercise.
To walk on a treadmill, right?
Or do you take the stairs, even if you're only taking the stairs down?
Right.
I just flew and I was in an airport, and there's always an escalator next to stairs. How many people going down will take the stairs rather than it's just a habit. So changing this habit doesn't really require you to add any more time, more than a minute or so into your day. But if you get in the habit of just moving your body more, or not, we made a website called torahhealth.org for people who either they don't like to read, they don't have access to the book. They can get a lot of this wisdom on torahhealth.org. It's a free site. And we have a whole page there for people who are sedentary. Here's technologies that will help you move your body more, like desks that go up, or a pedaler that you put under your desk to move your legs while you're sitting there. And making a new habit of how you move your body can be as important as finding time to exercise.
There's also so much on the internet now. Like, I mean, there's so many great sites where you could, YouTube channels where you could say, hey, you could like just Google 10 minutes of solid exercise at my desk, 10 minutes of in my living room. There's just so much out there. So I think that the not enough time thing, I think that's nowadays, you don't need a gym even. You don't need a gym. You don't need equipment. There's so much out there where you can do in your living room. You can, whatever, there's so many things you can do inside, outside, good weather, bad weather. You got a set of stairs in your house, walk up and down for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It's amazing exercise, right? Sit in your chair and stand up until you're tired. Like
if you're lacking even a slight bit of motivation, read our chapter. We have a chapter in the book called Why Exercise Matters. And you'll learn about the physiological longevity benefits of certain kinds of exercise, and there are different types. And just reading that, I hope, will help some people over the hump of motivation.
Yeah, and I think to both of your points about, setting the bar somewhat low with okay, I'm going to wake up today and just get my 10 minutes in at some point. They've done studies that if kind of like the lower you set your bar, not that that's necessarily a good thing to stick with, but the lower you set that bar, you'll actually start to be motivated to do more, because you're like, oh, well, 10 minutes almost felt too easy. I could go for 12 minutes, or I could go for 15.
Right. But the key is not so much the amount during the day, but it's the consistency. Like, you just get that consistency. And remember, and always with all things, I mean, diet, exercise, I talk to patients, I take care of pulmonary diseases also. So I take care of a lot of patients with sleep apnea. So that's how I got into this whole research on weight. In my training, I had to do research project on exercise and weight loss. And, listen, like there's so many things where people, I tell my patients, like, diets all work. Everybody's like, diets don't work. Every diet works. They all work. Always. Anybody who says the diets don't work, it's not true. The problem is they stop working when you stop doing them, because you can't be maintaining them. And I think the problem is people have a short timeline, right? You have to have a 2 to 5 year timeline, which means you're not going to judge. You're going to do a consistent daily activity, daily lifestyle change. And I'm not thinking about my weight in 6 months or 3 months or beach weather or the summer, right? I'm saying I'm doing this for 2 to 5 years. And if I lose, whatever, a pound a month, doesn't seem like very much, but over 2 to 5 years, that's quite a bit, right? And so if you have that longer, it's better to have a small slope with the long timeline. Because when you do, your body, just in general, the body doesn't like sudden changes in things. It usually reacts negatively, but gradual, it will adapt, both for good and for bad, unfortunately.
Let's just spell, if I may, just a myth that's out there that people have to know. It's kind of related to what Dr. Grove just said. Exercise will not cause you to lose weight. Exercise alone.
I mean, you have to do a lot. You can't.
Don't think that. I'm just telling you right now. You will not lose weight if you don't change the way you eat. And when I say that, dovetailing what Dr. Grove just said, he said he's being kind by saying 2 to 5 years. I'd say strongly that it's forever. Once you've decided to change eat a little more healthy. We're not saying don't take radical changes, but a small change, whatever small change you make. Let's say I'm going to cut down my liquid sugar consumption from a whole iced coffee a day to a taste a day. Let's say to do that, which would be tremendously good for your long-term health. But say to yourself, this is forever. I'm not just going to do this until I get to my weight goals. I'm doing it forever. That's the correct attitude to have, in my opinion, not only for success physically, but spiritually as well. We have to understand that the body, as I said earlier, the body is by design giving us challenges and desires that we're meant to conquer. So if you only conquer it for a month and then you fall back to it, you didn't really conquer it, right? You want it to be forever.
I totally agree with Rabbi Seinfeld. The only thing is when you say forever, I get anxious, right? So I try to find a window. What's a window that it's long enough that you can like be guaranteed to see difference? But I guarantee, listen, if you do anything for 2 to 5 years, you're probably going to do it longer than that. And once you've been doing it for 5 years, now you can say forever. I agree, but 100%, it should be forever. Listen, it's not rocket science. Like whatever you're doing to be healthy, the minute you stop doing, it stops working. You find, I mean, there's very few things in life where you stop doing it and then everything continues to work forever. You know what I mean? Like, guess compound interest. I don't know. I'm not in business, so I don't know. But like most things, like if you stop the activity, stop the behavior, you stop the practice of whatever you're doing, you're going to lose what you gain.
Yeah. Well, leading right into maybe starting something that's positive, I want to talk about happiness a little bit. You have a whole chapter in the book on true happiness. And, as we're talking about possibly eating unhealthy foods and conquering the urge to eat unhealthy foods or the urge not to exercise, you mentioned that overcoming that urge can actually result in the neshama happiness. Can you elaborate on the ways that we're tempted and tested a bit more? I'm sure we all have examples in our own lives of how we are tested in those ways. And do you have practical tips on how we might conquer the urge for that short-term pleasure?
So
Some people
I
turn, some,
go
many
ahead. You
people,
go first. Yeah.
well, some people are turning to food to avoid dealing with a psychological issue. It's a coping mechanism, and they could probably use some professional therapy, to help them deal with that. And we never said this in this conversation, but the book says, and I wanted to make it clear to your audience, we're not giving any specific medical advice at all. Anyone who has any issue that might be a medical or psychological should seek professional help. We're giving wisdom that hopefully will help a lot of people. But if eating is a coping mechanism for an underlying psychological challenge, maybe that underlying challenge needs to be dealt with first. But for the average person I think I'm pretty average, I enjoy indulging. I enjoy indulging. Who doesn't enjoy indulging, right? Indulging, I'm talking about, overindulging, eating food that I know is probably not healthy for me, but tastes so good, so enjoyable, right? That's it. Did anybody ever overeat and then later say, I'm so glad I did that? Did they ever eat one too many pieces of chicken or cake and later say, I'm so happy I'm stuffed? Nobody ever did. Nobody ever, it's the opposite. I shouldn't have eaten that extra piece. I shouldn't have done that. It turns out that the wisdom from the dietitians on how to avoid that is exact parallel from the wisdom from the rabbis. It's a fascinating fact that we put in the book, which is essentially, in a nutshell, to slow down. Now, what slowing down does is that apparently that we've discovered that the satiety signal, and it's a complex hormonal signal that tells us when we've had enough to eat. There's a delay between when we actually had enough to eat and when we feel that signal. That delay can be up to 20 minutes. This is a well-known fact among dietitians. So they advise you to slow down, because if you slow down, then you allow the time for that signal to turn on, and you'll be less likely to overeat, and to the point where you would regret it and it's not healthy. Well, this is exactly what the rabbis have been saying for millennia. Slow down, chew your food slowly, and you end up enjoying it more too. If you're wolfing down your food too fast, you're not getting all the joy out of that tasty food. This is, the rabbis tell us we were given this body with its taste, not merely, I said before, to control, but also to, yes, enjoy. We're meant to, that was really the basis of my first book that you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, Art of Amazement. So we were given this world. So the first time the Torah talks about a mitzvah in the Torah, that Adam and Eve are in the garden. what's the first thing they're commanded to do? Enjoy all the fruits of the garden, except for one. Okay, there's a little self-control put in there too, but most of it is enjoyment.
People always leave that part out. They only talk about the one they can't eat. They forget the fact that it says not only should you must, he says you must eat and enjoy the garden. Not that you can, you must. Just one. Okay, so one you can't have, right?
It says in the Talmud that if a person lives their whole life and they don't taste a healthy, holy, and kosher food that was offered to them, when they get to the next world, they'll be held accountable for it. God's going to say to them, how come you didn't try that, mango that, you had these mango, you didn't even try it. I mean, it's one thing if you tried it and say, I don't like it, but you're not even going to try it. What do you think God made mangoes for? For you to enjoy. That's what it's all about. But with that one little bit of self-control. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think there's a big sort of conflict between, I guess it's in our society, what we're being told will make us happy and what everybody really knows actually will make us happy. So we're being told that the short term, the quick, the fast, the indulgent will make us happy. And yet we all know after, like you said, after that second piece of cheesecake that I'm not happy right now, right? Because that's not what gives true happiness. That gives a temporary high, but then there's a hangover, right? There's a hangover, there's withdrawal, there's tolerance, all these things, there's hedonic adaptation. And so what really makes us happy is when we can enjoy things, but when a human being needs to feel that they're in control. And when we don't feel like we're in control, I think it affects our ability to feel connected because, listen, to be made in the image of God, God is the ultimate actor and creator. So when we feel like we're being acted upon and that we don't have agency over ourselves, I think that makes us feel deep down like not happy in the long term. So when I feel like I can control, or I'm in control of my eating and I'm in control of my body and in control of my life, it's going to make me feel deeply happy in that way. And the areas so if I'm feeling like I don't have any control over my eating and I don't have any control over my health, right? And then it's going to cause a problem. But when people, and you just ask anybody who is committed, listen, the first 3 to 6 months is usually really hard, but ask anybody who's really committed for more than 6 months to an exercise program, to a diet plan, and they are happier people. And that's over and above the actual sort of psychological, neurobiological, and neuropsychological changes that happen with exercise and with eating healthy. People feel that I'm in control. When I go to the restaurant or whatever, I'm deciding what I'm going to eat. I'm not just sort of passively letting my nerve endings drive me around town, right? And so I think that's a way that we can use diet. It's a beautiful thing, like, and not just, it's more than what Rabbi Seinfeld says. It's not just I get to enjoy the mango, I get to enjoy the feeling of being in control when I decide I'm going to eat the mango and not the ice cream.
And I'll
so now
add
I get
to
to enjoy the mango more.
Layer on top of that is knowing that God made this mango and my taste buds and my desires in order to give me the opportunity to do exactly that. So it's also, it's even higher than that. It's a transcendent experience when you slow down and exercise that self-control.
Let me tell you something. You want to enjoy ice cream? Spend your week really taking care of your body, exercising, eating well, so that you go out and you have ice cream, right? You're going to decide I'm going to have a little bit of ice cream and enjoy. You're going to enjoy that ice cream better than you've ever enjoyed it before. It's going to taste better. It's going to feel better, and you're going to enjoy it because you're in control. You can say, I'll have a little bit of ice cream. It's fine. Like, listen, I guess we're not supposed to give medical advice, but I'm giving medical advice. It's okay. If you take good care of your body and soul, you can have some ice cream. You can, it's okay. Like, you don't have to be a monk and like vows of starvation or whatever. Like, it's okay every once in a while, but it's about control. And I think that people get so overwhelmed with this idea that our capitalist society is sort of built like this. Is like everybody's is built. All these companies make money by making you think you're lacking something, right? You're lacking something, but if you buy our product, you'll feel better. And you can, whatever it is, food, clothing, electronics, whatever, you're missing something in your life. And then we all get it and we're like, okay, no, like, I don't know. I think that this is an opportunity with our food, with our exercise, to give us so much more than just physical health. And I think
I'd like to add a footnote here. There's a risk here that everyone watching this needs to know. I've encountered this with people. Some people fail repeatedly at that ice cream challenge, and they beat themselves up over it. They feel a total lack of control over that. And and I like to point out, and something we put in the book, there's a whole chapter on sugar. This, I'm telling you, is facts. This has been documented over the past century. The sugar industry has systematically, intentionally got us all addicted to sugar. We're all addicted to it. It's an addiction. It really is an addiction. It's added. I'm talking about added sugar. I'm not talking about natural sugar in a mango. I'm talking about the fructose mainly and sucrose that are added to almost every packaged good we eat, including some baby formulas. Go look next time in a grocery store where they sell baby formula. Look at the ingredients. You'll see some of them actually have. It's incredible that we're getting people addicted from the bottle. It's a terrible thing. So it's not your fault. It's not my fault. We've all been hoodwinked into this situation where we're literally addicted to sugar. And that means that if you're like me, and I'm going to be honest, if I have a tub of ice cream in my house, in my freezer, it's only so long I can hold out. And I'm not going to be able, my dear wife has agreed not to we don't keep it in the house. It sometimes exercise self-control means not even letting it, and this is true by people who are recovering from, say, alcoholism or other addictions. They know if it's in the house, it's a risk. Just don't have it around. This is true about sugar for a lot of people. Dr. Grove, if you paid attention to what he just said, he said, go out for ice cream. He didn't say bring it in. And I agree.
No, I was intentional. Where you can go and you can be in control.
I was underscoring it for people to hear this clearly. You have to be. This is a very Jewish idea. We put up fences for ourselves to protect ourselves from stumbling when we know there's a risk. Don't beat yourself up if you keep tripping over something, but you have to understand the real battle is not in your kitchen, it's in the grocery store. It's what you decide to buy and bring home.
I think that's a great.
I tell my wife that the biggest compliment I give for my wife if she makes like a dessert is I'll tell her, please don't ever make that again. That's how she knows it was amazing. I say, please don't make that again. that's the compliment. Please don't make.
No, I love that takeaway that it's like set yourself up for success. If you, like Rabbi Seinfeld, like you said, if you know ice cream is the weakness, just don't have it in the area because you're not setting yourself up for success and you're not going to make it easy for yourself. So
this is also especially true. Like this is super important with your children. So important. It's so important. Because the developing brain, like listen, sugar, salt, fat, these activate the same parts of your brain that drugs, alcohol, and tobacco do in the same way, just not quite as intensely. And so a developing brain is very susceptible to these addictions. That's why, like, listen, like you would never say like your kid's stressed or your kid doesn't want anything. You should have a couple shots of whiskey and you'll feel better, right? You wouldn't do that because of what it can do to the brain. So you have to be careful with constantly rewarding your children. Hey, listen, you got a great report card here. Here's a 6-pack of Bud Light. Enjoy. You know what I mean? Right? Here's a pack of cigarettes. Enjoy. We wouldn't do that to a kid because we know that it could affect their developing brain. So you have to be careful when we reward ourselves and with children using food and having it in the house. It could be a problem. And there's lots of research showing that it makes it harder for people as they get older if it's something that they get when they're younger.
Oh, I'm sure it's like part of the comfort zone that they develop as they become older. That, well, my parents always had ice cream in the house, so I'm going to have it. So that's
or reward. Like, how do you train a child? You reward yourself. Reward equals food, right? And that's a sort of a dangerous sort of line to be on.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about, I heard the word control come up a lot in that dialogue right there. So I want to shift into accountability. So what does accountability for taking care of ourselves entwined with supporting our spiritual aspirations? What does that look like on a daily basis? Do you have tips on how to hold ourselves accountable? I think I saw a few in the book. But I'm sure that that's something that helps this consistency that Dr. Grove, you keep leaning into, which is it's about consistency, but sometimes we need a little support along the way.
Oh yeah, listen, for sure. Like if you are living in the house with somebody, if this is a team effort, you're so much. I mean, we see this with smoking cessation a lot. That like when both partners are working together, it's so much more likely to be successful. You can't have one person trying to lose weight and the other person having tubs of ice cream in in the freezer, it's a problem. And I think that so partnering up, buddy systems, accountability partners, there's all kinds of things that you can do to improve your effectiveness. I always tell patients is to stop looking at the scale. And what you do is you print out one of those, you can print out a calendar of the month, and you draw a slash for every day that you keep to your diet goals, and a slash the other way every day you keep to your exercise goals, right? And your goal is not a weight, your goal is a full calendar. Have as many X's and slashes as you can on the calendar, okay? And then if you have 12 mostly full calendars, you'll be healthier, you'll look better, you'll feel better. And so like these sort of positive rewards, the consistency, rewarding yourself for consistency, finding accountability partners, battle buddies, right? Doing things that removing obstacles to good activities and adding obstacles to bad activities. So for example, like he says, like if you don't have good food in the house, you're creating now an obstacle to a bad behavior, a bad habit. So removing obstacles to good behavior would be like, okay, I'm going to put my gym bag in the trunk, right? It's in the trunk. Or like I've seen some people will put on their gym shorts like under their short pants. So like we're going, like I don't have to have this, oh, I got to go home, I got to, remove obstacles to good behaviors. Put the weights in your living room. Anything that can make things easier, I think, improves accountability, consistency, and there's a lot out there on this.
Let's underscore one aspect of accountability which you mentioned, which is that written record, whether it's on a calendar like you said or otherwise. This is actually a traditional Jewish practice. There's a whole area of Jewish thought called Musar, Mussar, Musar. Some people pronounce it Musar. There's organizations today that teach Musar. Musar means self-improvement, and one of the primary practices taught by Musar is a written accountability system for everybody in every situation that might look differently, but the common denominator is they're written. And I'll give you an example. I know someone right now who is trying to improve his health in certain ways, and he, under the guidance of his doctor, he has a very specific dietary goals, and because his health challenges are important to him, he keeps a written record of everything he eats, and he uses the computer software so that it computes the amount of nutrients he's getting. I know people who've lost weight by keeping, and I think it's the only way for most people to lose weight, by the way, is if you keep a record of what you're eating, because Dr. Grove says this in his first book on weight loss. Most people, if you eat based on estimation, you will 95 or 98% of people will fail because of our hormonal hunger signals will trick us into eating more than we think we are. The only way to achieve that is a written system. That's what accountability means, making an account. If you have an accountability partner, that's helpful, that's wonderful. But the bottom line is your accountability partner can't help you if you're not keeping a written record of what you're doing. You're lying to yourself and lying to your partner.
Yeah, sometimes just keeping the record without making any changes is enough, because once you become conscious or mindful of what you're eating, it's enough to motivate people to eat less. Because I didn't realize
we put in the book one of the aspects of the book that really helped people. I wanted to emphasize the book is not just about food and not just about exercise. A lot of other health topics there too, but we did, because food's such an important part of our lives and part of our challenges. We put a whole in the appendix, a whole calorie guide. Unlike other calorie guides, it's a very unusual calorie guide. You won't see anything like it in any other book. But number one, we rounded off calories are not precise. And you see a lot of calorie guides, they'll say that this is 42 calories or 61 calories. That's ridiculous. You can't be that precise. We rounded them off to enable easy estimation. Okay. Number two, we have charts there that enable you to keep track of your calories. And even if you're not trying to lose weight, it's recommended you do this for the exact reason Dr. Grove just said. By keeping tracking your calories for a couple of weeks of what you eat, is training yourself to be more aware of what you're actually eating. And once you've trained yourself to do that, you don't necessarily need to keep that type of written accountability up for long. But it's a wonderful exercise we recommend to people to do, to try it out if you want to develop a greater awareness of the fuel that you're putting into this Rolls Royce of yours.
odd follow-up question to that, which is, can you use your spirituality as an accountability partner? Meaning that, Dr. Rabbi Seinfeld, you said at the beginning, it's becoming a better version of yourself when you're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of the vessel to take care of the soul. And I'm just curious if you've ever found that that's been a motivating factor for some, because people are motivated by different things.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say if you're a religious person of any faith, and you believe that there's a God that created the world and you, and that this body is a gift to you, then it's a mindset of, oh, I'm caring for a gift. This is a miraculous thing that's carrying around my spiritual essence. It's a wonderful thing to be able to take care of it, And in Judaism, it's even better because you have this idea of fulfilling divine commands. I mean, Rabbi Seinfeld will tell you, like, the number of mitzvot that you keep with exercises, Rabbi Seinfeld, you can continue, like, the number that you take care of it each time you exercise.
When I used to go to the J, I have this little game I play with someone on the next treadmill, Jewish person, usually JCC, usually not always Jewish people. If there's a Jewish person next to me, I'd say, how many mitzvahs are you doing right now? And they never thought about it. And we put a whole chapter in here, how many mitzvahs could you arguably be fulfilling when you are doing any act to take care of your health, including exercise or eating healthy? And wow, if you're, I've never met a Jew of any flavor who doesn't care about doing mitzvahs. Mitzvahs means, whether you translate it as a good deed or, as I did earlier in this conversation, everybody cares about doing something called mitzvah. So wow, that's pretty motivational for me personally. I think for a lot of people it should be. You're doing a lot of mitzvahs. You could be, but let me just add one thing. It's like that eating that we were talking about before. It doesn't really count if you're not mindful about it. A mitzvah is made a mitzvah because your mind is there. If you're doing it merely out of habit because you had good training by your parents, it's a nice thing, right? But it's not spiritually so meaningful. It's important to study, and that's why study is so important. And because when you study, the more you learn, the more you can have that kavanah, that mindfulness, that intentionality that lifts up at whatever we do.
So I just want to remind everyone they can be typing any questions that they have in the chat. We're going to keep going here because we have a lot of great questions. So I want to read a success story that you had put in the book because I thought this was really profound, and I think a lot of people could connect to this. So the reader says, the most important thing that changed was my attitude. At first, I was trying to lose weight. Then I was trying to be healthy. Now I'm trying to be the greatest human being I can be. I love that quote, by the way. And I think we can agree that someone really needs to be ready for that change to feel this way. It's not maybe something that happens overnight. Maybe it's something that you're contemplating for a while. So through your research and your feedback from readers, what have you seen that helps people get to that point of being ready to make the change? I'd love to leave the audience today ready to pick one or two things out of their daily lives that they say, yes, I am ready to dive into this and make this change.
Are you asking what mentally they need to develop or what physically they need to do?
I mean, you can go in either direction, really. Just looking for tips on, I mean, it really could be both.
Maybe I'd like to share some wisdom from the rabbis. We have a book, famous book in our Jewish library called the Shulchan Aruch, or the Shulchan Aruch. It's usually in English translated as the Code of Jewish Law. It is written 500 years ago by Rabbi Yosef Karo, and it is considered one of the most authoritative texts post-Talmud. Okay, it's accepted universally with commentaries and stuff. So I'd like this. What this book is an encyclopedia of all of Judaism, like literally all of Judaism in an encyclopedia. So I'd like to put yourself in Rabbi Yosef Karo's shoes for a second. Okay, you're going to write an encyclopedia of Judaism, and you want to cover everything: holidays, religious stuff, interpersonal ethics, business ethics, everything, right? What are you going to do? What are you going to write as your opening sentence? For that whole encyclopedia, it's going to set the tone for all of Judaism. Now, if you ask me, I would have said something like about monotheism, belief in God, the Shema Yisrael, something like that's what I would have thought. But that's not what Rabbi Yosef Karo chose to put as his opening sentence. And I think this is very telling. I think this answers your question for a lot of people, maybe for all of us. In his wisdom, he writes how a person should get out of bed in the morning. You know how you should get out of bed in the morning? Like a lion. What? Do you ever see those nature films about how lions get out of bed? They yawn, they roll over, they go back to sleep. I don't think that's what Rabbi Karo meant. I think what he means is a person should get out of bed in the morning like a lion attacked with alacrity. We call in Hebrew zrizut. This is what we learned from the Passover Seder, why Passover is our national holiday, because it's all about rushing out of Egypt. The metaphor is for life. And what motivates a person to do that, to not hit the snooze button, not just in the morning, but in life in general, but to act with alacrity in life? Rabbi Karo tells us, because you know that you are created for a purpose. You were created for a purpose. Your purpose is to raise yourself up from being behemoth, animal, to B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. When the Torah says we were made in the image of God, what that means is it's a potential. You're only godly if you act godly. You have that potential that a monkey doesn't have, that a dolphin doesn't have, and that an elephant doesn't have, that an octopus, even as the smartest creature in the world, the octopus, right? They can figure out how to open a child-proof cap and they never saw before. They've shown this, you can see this on YouTube, incredibly intelligent. They don't have the ability to become in the image of God. Only we do. And that's what you're made for. And we need to, but Rabbi Yosef Karo is telling us something very profound there. He's saying it's a daily effort. We have to renew that zrizut, that alacrity every single morning, because human nature is to take me down the path of the behemoth, the animal. And I got to remind myself every morning I was made for this purpose, and try to get myself out of bed. Not just means literally out of bed, but also figuratively when applied to everything in life.
Yeah, so good. So he did. Listen, I always joke that the book is called Body and Soul. He's the soul, I'm the body part. He wrote the soul part, I did the body part. I think that if you can do two things, if you're just getting started, I think is from the diet perspective, increase your lean protein, decrease your sugar. Start with there. But I think that exercise. It is the most important thing you can do for your health. It is just so important, and our lifestyles are just so against it, right? So find a way to make exercise a part of your life. Like I said, a couple minutes a day to start. Just build the habit, move your body, and build and consistency and build over time. It makes everything better. It is the fountain of youth. You will look younger. And there's no age, by the way. It's never too late. You're never too old. There's evidence showing reversal of aging in people in their 70s when they start exercising. There are people you could run a marathon in your 80s. Like there are Ironman triathletes in their 80s and ultra marathon that started when they were 70, right? It's totally possible.
I'm not sure that every viewer is going to trust a pulmonary care physician about geriatrics. So on our medical advisory board, we have a head of geriatrics at Hopkins Hospitals who said exactly what Dr. Grove was saying. I asked him this question. I said, is there any universal that you'd say in terms of health that would apply to every single person, regardless of their age or their condition? He said exactly what Dr. Grove said. Exercise, obviously, you have to do the appropriate exercise for your body and your condition. And maybe you need to consult with an expert to know what's right for you. But absolutely, all the doctors confirm what Dr. Grove has said. Exercise, appropriate exercise, is good for everybody.
Everything, every part. The only thing exercise is not good for is broken bones. Okay, but everything else is good for.
By the way, you mentioned lowering sugar. I'd like to put in a word for people. If you could do one, if you want to start lowering your sugar intake, please, I beg of you. Liquid sugar. I'm not against. I got a phone call couple of weeks ago, someone called me up out of the blue, and a rabbi, and I said, "Thank you." I said, "What for?" "You're welcome. What for?" He said, "Because thanks to you, I didn't eat a single donut on Hanukkah." I want people to, I'm not against donuts. I'm not against cake or cookies or ice cream, but I am against liquid sugar. Liquid sugar is really, really harmful. And we have write about in detail in the book why it's harmful. If you could reduce, and that means includes apple juice, orange juice, grape juice, liquid fructose, if you could reduce it so you don't have more than a little bit at a time, you will greatly increase your odds for avoiding many diseases, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, 5 types of cancer. Reduce that liquid sugar. I didn't say go to zero because that's too high of a bar for most people. If you could just reduce it even to half of what you drink right now, you will see, God willing, great long-term benefits, and the self-control benefit as well, which is obviously we've been talking about.
Well, and I think what Dr. Grove, you said earlier about kind of waiting, like taking that week of, maybe you don't have that liquid sugar and you wait a week, but you've worked really hard on your body, and then you get that little bit on like a Saturday as a treat. It makes it that much more rewarding. So I think, kind of the longer stints that you can make in between having those things you can help with progress. So we're running a little short on time, so I want to start to wrap things up. I think this has been a wonderful discussion. I am going to end with one more quote from the book that I found really profound, and I'm not actually going to ask a question after this quote. Maybe you can just help us wrap up the conversation with an afterthought from it, or a pearl of wisdom, if you will. So it says, the reason that Hellenism promoted all types of sports is because that philosophy doesn't consider the human soul to be transcendent, and therefore promotes physical cultivation as the greatest aspiration. In contrast, the Torah mandate for physical exercise is simply to be healthy. The body's function is to serve as a strong and healthy vessel for the containment of the soul. Its purpose is to help the soul withstand challenges and shape its spiritual world. So I think a lot of times, especially in the United States, there's a lot of emphasis on, go big or go home. You're either running for a marathon or a triathlon or something like that, and that can intimidate folks from getting into this practice. So I love that quote because I think it sounds very accepting of whatever kind of movement works for you. So if you can help us end the conversation with a thought on that, I'd appreciate it.
Seinfeld, go ahead.
The communities around the world that have the greatest number of centenarians, people who live to 100, they've been studied, and they're not people who are running marathons. In fact, running marathons, there's evidence that it's harmful to the body in the long term. It's very, very hard on the body to do extreme sports. I don't care what the society says, and if we ignore it, the people who are having the best long-term outcomes in health are those who are doing exactly what that quote says. You're investing in your old age. One of the motivators for me is I see people who are in wheelchairs or walkers or nursing homes for preventable reasons. Who doesn't want to be? You can't control how long you can live. You can control how well you live. And whatever you do now, whatever age you're at, you're investing in your 80s and 90s. My goal is that everybody watching this should be vibrant and active at 80, 90, and older. And the only way you're going to do that is if you decide that you have the ability to change and make that a commitment that you want to live that kind of life. And that to me is all you need to say. Forget about the other stuff. If you like watching the sports, fine, but that shouldn't guide you. There's not a lot of wisdom in that. The wisdom is right here.
I would just change what you said, that you decide that you can do these things. You can do these things. You definitely can change. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how you've never done this before. I've seen people in all ages, in all levels of conditioning, in all levels of diet who've made dramatic changes. There's no person who's too young or too old. There's no person who's gone too far. There's no person who's too off the reservation who can't make a difference. But the key, I think, is consistency consistency, the accumulation of small daily actions over long periods of time. And that's I think the path to success. And there's no question, each and everyone, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you are, you can do this for sure.
What a positive note to end on. Well, Rabbi Seinfeld and Dr. Grove, I want to thank you both so much for being with us this evening. This is definitely one of those Spark Your Health conversations that I could have kept going if there wasn't a time limit on us. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I'll be sending out an email after this with all of our upcoming winter Spark Your Health talks, winter and spring. There's a lot coming up, so stay tuned. And I hope that everyone has a lovely and safe evening.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care, guys. Stay warm.
Yes, stay warm.